My stepdad. Read my stepsister's therapy records out loud at the dinner table, mocking her anger issues and calling her a danger to the family. When I tried to stand up for her, he sneered and said, "You're just as delusional as she is." I didn't say a word. That was 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, he sat in therapy, red-faced and silent, while the counselor read every letter he'd hidden. Okay, so this happened last year, and I'm still processing it honestly. When my mom remarried, I thought I was getting a normal stepfamily, but instead I got stuck with Juliet, who apparently came with a whole reputation. My stepdad Jerome sat me down before she moved in and was like, "You need to be careful around this girl because she has serious anger issues and attacked a teacher at her old school." He said she's been doing rage therapy, but it's not working and I should keep my distance. I'm thinking, great, another family disaster. But when Juliet actually showed up, she was just this quiet, skinny girl with a gnarly scar on her face who looked like she wanted to disappear. Jerome immediately started rattling off house rules about locked doors and eating separately so there wouldn't be any incidents with kitchen knives, which seemed completely insane to me, but whatever. The next few weeks were honestly uncomfortable to watch. My family treated Juliet like she was some kind of ticking time bomb ready to explode any second. Jerome literally locked up everything even remotely resembling a weapon, including my baseball bat, and made me eat dinner first every night so Juliet couldn't stab me with a fork or something equally ridiculous. My mom would jump whenever Juliet walked into a room, and Jerome constantly made these passive-aggressive comments about attitude problems and anger management, even though Juliet never actually did anything wrong. She just got quieter and smaller every day, which didn't seem like typical angry person behavior to me. The weirdest part was finding out Juliet spent weekends volunteering at the animal shelter. I followed her there once and watched her sit for hours with these traumatized dogs, coaxing them out of corners with incredible patience. Meanwhile, Jerome would scream at her for 20 minutes straight about water spots on dishes, calling her irresponsible while she just stood there taking it without fighting back. Everything went sideways 3 weeks ago when my girlfriend Mabel decided to destroy my life. I caught her hooking up with my friend Marcus, and when I confronted her, she completely flipped the script. She showed up at school the next day with a bruise claiming I hit her, which was total bullshit, but half the school believed her immediately. By lunch, Mabel had convinced her friends to corner me behind the gym, and Marcus was talking about teaching me a lesson about hitting women. I'm 5'8", and these guys are all over 6 feet, so I was basically screwed, until Juliet appeared out of nowhere. When Marcus tried to argue, she stepped between us and said if they wanted to fight someone, they could start with her. Something about how she carried herself made them back down, which honestly saved me from getting destroyed. Mabel kept screaming that I was dangerous, but Juliet just stared her down until they all walked away. When I got home and explained what happened, Jerome lost his absolute mind. He started yelling about how this was exactly what he was worried about, and Juliet was dragging me into her violent world. My mom immediately backed him up, saying Juliet seeks out conflict and was corrupting me with aggressive behavior. Jerome threatened to call her mother about sending Juliet back because clearly the anger management wasn't working, and she was becoming dangerous to our family. The whole time they're screaming at her, Juliet just stood there, not defending herself or explaining that she literally saved me from getting my A's kicked. I tried telling them what really happened, but Jerome cut me off, saying violent people always justify their actions by claiming they were protecting someone. They sent her to PAC while discussing residential treatment facilities like she was some kind of criminal. The situation got nuclear 2 days later when Mabel's lies spread through school, and other parents started calling Jerome asking if we were really housing a violent teenager who fights at school. My mom became completely paranoid, making Juliet check in every hour like she was on house arrest. The whole house became toxic with everyone walking on eggshells, except the person they claimed was dangerous. I felt sick watching them destroy her for protecting me, but apparently everything was always going to be her fault, no matter what actually happened. Last night I found Juliet crying because Jerome gave her an ultimatum about residential treatment or moving back with her mother who doesn't want her. She finally told me the truth about her old school, and it completely shattered everything I thought I knew. She never attacked her teacher, but he cornered her in the supply closet and tried forcing himself on her. When she fought him off, he threw her into metal shelving, giving her that scar, then claimed she assaulted him unprovoked. Since he was a respected teacher, everyone believed his story over hers. The therapy wasn't for anger management, but trauma recovery, and the residential facility was just a way to hide their shame. Every adult in her life failed her, and now our family was doing the exact same thing. She said the worst part wasn't being blamed for defending herself, but watching how quickly people she trusted could turn against her when authority figures told them to. She looked at me with these exhausted eyes and said she was tired of being everyone's villain when all she ever did was try to survive. I asked where she was planning to go, and she said anywhere was better than staying somewhere she wasn't wanted. I sat there in stunned silence, processing everything she'd just revealed. The supply closet, the teacher, the scar, it all made horrifying sense now. My hands clenched into fists, thinking about how everyone had failed her, how we'd been failing her too. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, Jerome's heavy tread getting closer. Juliet's eyes went wide with panic. I grabbed her suitcase and started shoving clothes back into her dresser. She stood frozen, watching me work frantically to hide any evidence she'd been packing. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. The doorknob rattled, locked, thankfully. Jerome's voice boomed through the wood, demanding to know what was going on in there. I whispered to Juliet that we'd figure this out together, that she wasn't going anywhere. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, helping me stuff the last items away. Jerome's key scraped in the lock. The door swung open just as I shoved the empty suitcase under her bed. He stood there glaring at us, his face red with suspicion. He demanded to know why Juliet hadn't left yet. The way his eyes narrowed suggested he'd heard something through the door. My mind raced for an excuse. I blurted out something about car trouble, how I'd offered to help check the engine before she left. Jerome's stare bore into me like he could see straight through the lie. Mom appeared behind him, cell phone pressed to her ear. Through the speaker, I could hear another woman's voice, tired, frustrated. Juliet's biological mother. Mom was already making arrangements for pickup tomorrow morning. The woman on the phone sounded almost relieved when she mentioned work conflicts that would make taking Juliet back complicated. My stomach dropped. Less than 12 hours. That's all the time I had to figure out how to save my stepsister from being thrown away like garbage again. I cleared my throat and asked if I could at least say goodbye properly. regularly. One evening with my stepsister before she left forever. Jerome's jaw tightened, but Mom nodded, probably thinking it would keep things peaceful. Jerome agreed, but with conditions. He held out his hand, demanding my phone and car keys. No dramatic nonsense, he said. No running off to create more problems. I handed them over, realizing too late what this meant. We were trapped. No way to call for help, no transportation. He'd anticipated resistance and cut off our escape routes before we even knew we needed them. After they left, Juliet slumped onto her bed. She looked smaller than ever, defeated. But then something shifted in her expression. She told me she remembered things about that teacher, his full name, the exact school where it happened. Details she'd never shared with anyone because she'd been too afraid. The name made me sick. Mr. Davidson. The way she said it, the way her whole body tensed. I knew she was telling the truth. These weren't the kinds of details someone made up. They were burned into her memory. We snuck into my room and started searching online. What we found made my blood run cold. Buried in Jerome's email printouts from months ago were messages about a teacher transferring to our district. The timeline was damning. Mr. Davidson had moved here the year before Juliet did. He'd followed her. Jerome's fist pounded on my door, demanding to know what we were doing. Our research time was up. He assigned me a list of family meeting preparation tasks, clearly designed to keep me busy and away from Juliet for the rest of the evening. While folding laundry in his office, I found more printouts. Teacher recommendations, all glowing reviews of Mr. Davidson's character and teaching excellence. Jerome had kept these despite knowing Juliet's story. The implications made me nauseous. Jerome caught me reading them. His face went purple with rage, demanding to know why I was snooping through his private papers. That's when he revealed the truth. He and Davidson were golf partners, had been for months. He knew the man's character, he insisted. A good teacher, falsely accused by a troubled student. Everything clicked into place. The golf partnership, the fierce protection of Davidson's reputation, the refusal to believe Juliet. Jerome cared more about his social standing at the country club than his stepdaughter's safety. When I tried to argue, Jerome threatened to call the police about my erratic behavior. He said I was becoming unstable, just like Juliet. That's when Mom walked in, immediately taking his side. She said I was too emotionally involved to see clearly. I asked her point blank if she'd ever read Juliet's therapy reports. The silence that followed was deafening. She admitted she hadn't. Jerome had said they would just upset her, so she'd thrown them away, unopened, unread. Willful ignorance disguised as self-care. The phone rang. A family friend calling to check on the situation. I listened to Jerome spin his version of events. A troubled girl manipulating a kind family. A naive stepson falling for textbook victim manipulation tactics. He'd been managing the narrative with their entire social circle, preparing them to dismiss anything Juliet or I might say. The systematic campaign to discredit her was breathtaking. Every move calculated to ensure no one would believe her if she tried to speak up. The worst part was realizing Jerome had probably always suspected Juliet was telling the truth. That's why he'd worked so hard to control the story. Dinner was a supervised interrogation disguised as a farewell meal. Jerome peppered Juliet with questions about her version of events, probing for contradictions. But his questions revealed too much. He knew details about the assault that he couldn't possibly know unless he'd discussed it extensively with Davidson. The way he described the supply closet layout, the timing of the alleged incident, specific details about her injuries, information that only came from long conversations with the teacher. Juliet's hands shook as she realized the same thing I did. Jerome hadn't just chosen not to believe her. He'd actively helped her attacker craft his defense. That night, I couldn't sleep. Through the thin walls, I heard Jerome on the phone, his voice low but urgent. He was coaching someone through responses to potential accusations, preparing them for questions that might come up, warning them about exposure. Davidson. He was warning Davidson that Juliet might talk, giving him time to prepare counter-narratives and shore up his defenses. My stepfather wasn't just complicit. He was actively protecting a predator. Morning came too fast. Juliet's biological mother stood at our front door, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, refusing to look directly at her daughter. When Juliet tried to speak, the woman cut her off. She admitted in a flat voice that she believed Juliet's story. She just couldn't handle the complications that came with it. The legal battles, the social fallout, the judgment from others. It was easier to send her away. Desperation made me reckless. I blurted out that Juliet was sick, needed one more day before traveling. The lie was transparent, but it bought us 24 hours. Jerome's satisfied smirk told me he'd expected this. He was enjoying watching us scramble. He agreed to the delay, but made himself our constant shadow. Every room we entered, he followed. Every conversation we tried to have, he interrupted. Private communication became impossible. He'd transformed our home into a minimum security prison with himself as the warden. At breakfast, he casually mentioned that Davidson had just received tenure confirmation at the school. Protected status. Untouchable. The timing wasn't coincidental. Jerome's golf connections extended deep into the school administration. The fix was already in at every level. I overheard his next phone call, this time with the school principal. He was warning them about potential false accusations from a troubled student with a history of violence. The conspiracy went beyond just protecting Davidson. They were actively preparing to destroy Juliet's credibility before she could even speak. I memorized the principal's name and phone number from Jerome's conversation. Maybe I could call from school, find someone who would listen. But Jerome must have seen me hovering near his office. He exploded, restricting me to my room for the rest of the day. When truth threatened exposure, his mask of concerned stepfather slipped, revealing something much darker underneath. Isolated and running out of time, I had to find physical evidence, something concrete that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. I snuck back into Jerome's office while he was distracted by a delivery. There, in his desk drawer, was a handwritten note that made my hands shake. Thanks for handling the Juliet situation discreetly. Golf Sunday? Davidson. Proof. Written proof of coordination between them. I was still staring at it when Jerome returned early from his errands. He found me there, note in hand, and his entire demeanor changed. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered completely. Jerome's cold eyes locked onto mine as he stepped into the office. His hands flexed at his sides, and for the first time, I saw him as the calculating predator he truly was. He reached for the note, but I stepped back, clutching it tighter. He didn't yell. That would have been less terrifying than the quiet, controlled way he closed the door behind him. The click of the lock sent ice through my veins. He explained in a measured tone that I was interfering in matters I didn't understand, that protecting our family sometimes meant making difficult choices. I watched his face transform as he revealed the truth. He'd orchestrated Juliet's placement in our family from the beginning. When Davidson had called him in a panic about a student making accusations, Jerome saw an opportunity: marry the girl's mother's friend, gain control over the potential witness, monitor her, manage her narrative, protect his golf buddy, and maintain his social standing. My legs felt weak. Mom hadn't fallen in love. She'd been targeted, manipulated into a relationship designed to silence a traumatized child. The calculation behind it made me physically ill. Jerome offered me a deal: full college funding, a new car, anything I wanted. All I had to do was stop interfering with family stability. The bribe hung in the air between us, revealing just how much of a threat he considered me, how desperate he was becoming. I refused without hesitation. His face darkened, and he reached for his phone. Within minutes, he'd called my school counselor, expressing concern about my mental state. His voice dripped with false worry as he described my conspiracy theories and erratic behavior. The counselor arrived within the hour for a wellness check. She sat across from me in our living room, Jerome hovering nearby as she questioned my fixation on family drama. Her professional demeanor suggested she'd already been briefed on my supposed instability. Then Juliet walked in, calm, composed, carrying a folder of documents. She handed them to the counselor without a word: official therapy records, medical documentation of her injuries, a timeline of events that contradicted everything Jerome had told people. The counselor's expression shifted as she read. Her eyes darted between the papers and Jerome, whose jaw had gone rigid. When she requested to speak with Juliet privately, Jerome had no choice but to comply. Refusing would have looked suspicious. They disappeared into the study while Jerome paced our living room like a caged animal. Mom watched him with growing unease. His mask was cracking, revealing glimpses of the controlling manipulator beneath. Behind closed doors, Juliet provided the counselor with Davidson's name, the school where the assault occurred, specific details about the supply closet incident. The counselor's face went pale. She recognized the name. There had been other complaints in the previous district, a pattern of behavior that had been quietly managed through transfers and recommendations. When they emerged, the counselor's entire demeanor had changed. She questioned our family dynamics, Jerome's response to Juliet's trauma, the wisdom of sending her away. Her professional concern was evident as she watched Jerome's aggressive response to her questions. Mom witnessed it all. The way Jerome's voice rose when challenged, how he tried to discredit the therapist as inexperienced, his barely contained fury when the counselor suggested family therapy before any decisions about Juliet's placement. The counselor left with a promise to follow up. She'd bought us time, but Jerome was spiraling. He turned his rage on me, threatening my college applications. He had connections at several schools. One phone call could destroy everything I'd worked for. The choice crystallized before me: my future or Juliet's safety. 4 years of academic achievement versus protecting an innocent girl from continued victimization. It wasn't really a choice at all. I told him to make his calls. My refusal to be blackmailed sent him into a fury. Mom finally saw him clearly as he screamed about ungrateful children destroying everything he'd built. His concern wasn't for family. It was for his reputation, his social standing, his carefully constructed image. That evening, Mom confronted Jerome privately. I heard their voices through the walls, hers growing stronger as his became more desperate. She'd found the therapy reports in the trash, unopened, read them, understood what she'd been willfully ignoring. Jerome's story began to contradict itself. He claimed he'd never met Davidson before the golf club, then admitted to knowing him professionally, said he'd had no contact about Juliet, then acknowledged they'd discussed the situation. Each lie uncovered another layer of deception. Mom scheduled an emergency family therapy session for the next morning. Jerome tried to cancel it, but she held firm. Professional guidance was non-negotiable if their marriage had any chance of surviving. The appointment was set, creating a ticking clock for Jerome's unraveling control. That night, Jerome made one last desperate play. He offered to send both Juliet and me to expensive private schools, full scholarships, apartments, anything to make this situation disappear. His desperation revealed how much he stood to lose if the truth emerged. We both refused, united in pursuing truth regardless of personal cost. Jerome's final mask slipped as he raged about ungrateful children. Mom watched from the doorway, seeing clearly that his only concern was maintaining his false life. She called an emergency family meeting. No more lies, she declared. Complete honesty from everyone. Jerome's attempts to control the narrative fell apart under direct questioning. His evasions and contradictions piled up while Juliet's consistent, detailed account stood in stark contrast. The final blow came when Mom discovered a box of unopened mail in Jerome's office. Letters from Juliet's previous school, follow-up attempts from her therapist, documentation that multiple people had tried to check on her welfare, all blocked by Jerome's interference. Mom's hands shook as she read letter after letter, teachers expressing concern, a school counselor requesting updates, even a social worker attempting to follow up on the case. All intercepted, all hidden, all silenced by Jerome's systematic campaign to bury the truth. She confronted him with the evidence. His admission was couched in justifications about protecting the family from drama and publicity. He'd handled things to avoid unnecessary complications, made decisions to preserve their reputation, never once mentioning Juliet's well-being or the injustice she'd suffered. The therapy session arrived with Jerome forced to participate or face Mom's ultimatum. The therapist, a sharp-eyed woman with decades of experience, recognized the family dynamics immediately. Victim blaming, gaslighting, systematic emotional abuse disguised as concern. Jerome tried his usual charm, but manipulation tactics obvious to trained professionals fell flat. The therapist advocated firmly for Juliet's protection, recommending she remain in the family with me as primary support. Jerome's authority over her should be removed immediately. His explosion at the recommendation revealed everything. He needed to control the narrative, needed to punish Juliet for causing problems. The vindictive core of his motivations lay exposed for everyone to see. The therapist made an urgent referral for continued family counseling. Another appointment was scheduled for the following day, creating more pressure on Jerome's crumbling control. The walls were closing in. Jerome played his nuclear option. He threatened to expose our family drama to my college admissions officer. practices, to spread the word about my concerning behavior throughout our social circle. Mutual assured destruction if I didn't back down. I called his bluff. Truth would hurt less than continued complicity and abuse. Let him make his calls. Let him spread his poison. I'd rather face consequences with integrity than succeed through silence. He followed through immediately. Within hours, my school was questioning my judgment. Teachers who'd written recommendations suddenly had concerns about my stability. The academic future I'd built crumbled with each phone call. Juliet found me that night, tears streaming down her face. She offered to leave, to disappear completely if it would save my future. Her willingness to sacrifice herself again for someone else's comfort broke my heart. I refused. Protecting her mattered more than protecting myself. The transformation from passive observer to active protector was complete. No amount of personal cost would make me abandon her now. Jerome's panic escalated. I overheard him leaving a frantic voicemail for Davidson about the situation spiraling out of control. Family therapy was tomorrow. Things were moving beyond his ability to manage. He needed help. The callback came while we were all in the kitchen. Davidson's voice on speakerphone triggered an immediate trauma response in Juliet. She went rigid, her breathing shallow, hands trembling. The physical reaction was undeniable proof of her truth. Davidson's tone contained subtle threats about remembering things correctly before any official conversations. The predatory undertone made my skin crawl. This was the man Jerome had been protecting. This was the character he'd vouched for. Mom heard it all. The inappropriate familiarity and how Davidson spoke about her stepdaughter. The entitled assumption that Juliet would stay quiet. The barely veiled warnings about consequences for speaking up. I watched Jerome's face as his friend's true nature emerged. The dawning horror suggested that perhaps he'd genuinely believed Davidson's innocence. Or maybe he'd just been better at lying to himself than I'd thought. Davidson's mask dropped completely when Mom took the phone and challenged him. His friendly demeanor vanished, replaced by aggressive entitlement. How dare this ungrateful girl cause problems after everything he'd done for education? Didn't she understand the damage false accusations could cause? Mom's quick thinking saved us. While Jerome stood frozen, she grabbed his phone and started recording. Davidson's threats escalated, promising to handle the family situation personally if needed, to set records straight at school, to ensure Juliet faced consequences for her lies. Every word damned him further. The recording captured not just threats, but an admission of ongoing interest in silencing Juliet. Evidence of continued danger to our family. Proof that could be shared with school administrators, therapists, anyone who needed to understand the truth. Davidson's retreat came with promises of retribution. He'd make sure the whole community knew what kind of family we were, what kind of troubled girl we harbored. The social destruction Jerome had feared was coming anyway, delivered by the very man he'd protected. Mom ended the call and turned to Jerome. Her ultimatum was simple. Cut all contact with Davidson immediately. Support whatever Juliet needed for healing. Choose his family over his friend. Choose truth over reputation. Jerome stood at the crossroads, his entire false life crumbling around him. The golf partnership that meant so much. The social standing he'd cultivated. The reputation he'd protected through systematic abuse of a traumatized child. All of it hung in the balance. His choice would determine everything. Whether our family could heal together or would need to separate permanently. Whether Juliet would finally have adults who protected rather than persecuted her. Whether Mom would stay married to a man who'd revealed such calculated cruelty. The silence stretched between us all, heavy with the weight of pending decision. Jerome's face cycled through emotions. Anger, fear, calculation, and finally something that might have been shame, or maybe just regret at being caught. Mom's phone buzzed with a text from the therapist confirming tomorrow's emergency session. The countdown to full exposure had begun. Jerome had hours to decide who he really was, who he wanted to be, whether redemption was possible or whether his true nature would win. Juliet stood beside me, no longer small or defeated. The truth had given her power, even if justice remained uncertain. She'd found her voice and people who believed her. That alone was a victory after years of silenced suffering. I thought about the principal's number I'd memorized, the recording Mom had secured, the therapist's documentation, the counselor's recognition of Davidson's pattern. Pieces of truth assembled into an undeniable picture. Not perfect justice, but accountability approaching. The cost had been steep. My academic future lay in ruins. Our family structure had shattered. Social standing Jerome valued so highly was about to evaporate. But Juliet was safe. Truth had been spoken. Predators had been exposed. Tomorrow would bring new battles. The therapy session where everything would be laid bare. Decisions about marriage, family, and futures. Consequences for choices made and lies told. But tonight, for the first time since Juliet arrived, she wasn't alone. Jerome's decision loomed, but its power had diminished. Whether he chose family or reputation, truth had already won. The systematic abuse had ended. The conspiracy of silence had shattered. Whatever came next, Juliet would face it with people who chose her safety over their comfort. The middle section closed with Jerome standing at his crossroads, our family forever changed, and truth finally stronger than the lies that had nearly destroyed an innocent girl. The final confrontation approached, but the hardest battle, breaking the silence, was already won. The therapist's recommendation hung in the air like a challenge. Jerome's face contorted with rage as he processed the idea of losing control over Juliet. His need to punish her for disrupting his carefully constructed life became undeniable to everyone in the room. The therapist calmly made notes while Jerome's mask completely disintegrated. She scheduled an emergency follow-up session for the next day, creating another deadline that pressed against Jerome's crumbling authority. The professional validation of Juliet's trauma shifted the family's power dynamics permanently. Jerome retreated to his office, slamming the door hard enough to rattle picture frames. Through the walls, I heard him making frantic phone calls. His voice carried desperation as he tried to control damage that had already spread beyond containment. Mom found me in the hallway, her face showing a mixture of determination and fear. She'd finally seen through Jerome's manipulations, but dismantling a marriage built on lies would take more than one revelation. Her hands trembled as she clutched the folder of intercepted letters. That evening, Jerome emerged with his nuclear option ready. He'd already contacted my school administration, painting me as an unstable teenager creating elaborate conspiracy theories. The guidance counselor had left 3 voicemails expressing concern about my recent behavior changes. I listened to the messages, each one documenting how Jerome's poison had spread through my academic life. Teachers who'd supported me for years suddenly questioned my judgment. My college recommendations were being reconsidered. 4 years of building an academic future crumbled in hours. Juliet found me sitting in the dark, staring at rejection emails from early admission programs. She sank down beside me, tears flowing as she apologized for destroying my future. Her offer to disappear immediately if it would help repair the damage broke something inside me. My refusal came without hesitation. Some things mattered more than college applications. Protecting someone who'd been systematically failed by every adult in her life ranked higher than protecting my own prospects. The choice crystallized everything I'd learned about real courage. Jerome's panic escalated overnight. I woke to hear him on the phone with Davidson, his voice pitched high with fear. The family therapy session loomed, threatening to expose everything they'd worked to hide. Their conspiracy was unraveling faster than they could manage. Davidson's response came through the speakerphone in the kitchen during breakfast. His voice sent Juliet rigid, her whole body responding to trauma memories. The physical reaction provided more proof than any words could offer. This was real. This had happened. This man had hurt her. His tone shifted to subtle threats when he realized the whole family was listening. He reminded everyone about the importance of accurate memories, especially before any official conversations. The predatory undertone made Mom's face go pale with recognition. She grabbed Jerome's phone while he stood frozen, activating the recording function. Davidson's threats escalated as he promised to handle the family situation personally. He'd ensure the truth came out about what kind of troubled girl we were harboring. Every word provided more evidence of ongoing danger. The recording captured Davidson's entitled rage perfectly. His mask had slipped completely, revealing the predator Jerome had been protecting. Mom's quick thinking had secured proof that could be shared with school administrators, therapists, anyone who needed to understand the real threat. Jerome watched his carefully maintained world collapse in real time. His golf partner's true nature lay exposed. The social connections he'd cultivated would evaporate once people heard the recording. Everything he'd sacrificed Juliet's well-being to protect was already gone. Mom ended the call and faced Jerome with an ultimatum that brooked no negotiation. Cut all contact with Davidson immediately. Support Juliet's healing process completely. Choose family over reputation. Choose truth over comfortable lies. The marriage depended on his decision. Jerome's face cycled through emotions as he processed the complete destruction of his false life. The country club membership that meant everything to him. The social standing built on protecting a predator. The reputation maintained through systematic abuse of a traumatized child. All of it was finished. The emergency therapy session arrived with Jerome barely holding himself together. The therapist's experienced eyes took in the family dynamics immediately. She recognized the patterns of victim blaming, gaslighting, and emotional abuse disguised as concern for family stability. Her recommendations were swift and non-negotiable. Juliet would remain with the family under my primary care. Jerome's authority over her ended immediately. Family counseling would continue twice weekly until trust could be rebuilt through consistent action, not words. Jerome's explosion at losing control revealed his true motivations to everyone present. He needed to punish Juliet for disrupting his life, needed to maintain dominance over the narrative. The therapist documented every vindictive word, building a record that would protect Juliet going forward. Mom's transformation accelerated as she watched Jerome's behavior in the therapeutic setting. Without his usual ability to manipulate and control conversations, his abusive patterns became undeniable. She saw clearly how she'd been complicit through willful blindness. The session ended with Jerome storming out, but not before issuing his final threat. He'd ensure my academic future was completely destroyed. Every college would know about my unstable behavior. Every opportunity would evaporate. Mutual assured destruction was his only remaining weapon. I met his threat with calm acceptance. Truth mattered more than transcripts. Protecting Juliet outweighed protecting my prospects. The decision to prioritize integrity over advancement had already been made. His threats held no power over choices already committed to. Within hours, the consequences manifested. Emails from admissions offices questioned recent reports about my behavior. Scholarship committees reconsidered their offers. Teachers who'd written glowing recommendations suddenly developed concerns about my judgment and stability. Juliet watched the destruction of my future with horror. She tried again to sacrifice herself, offering to leave immediately if it would salvage anything. Her learned pattern of accepting blame for others' cruelty nearly won, but I refused to let her disappear to convenience anyone. That night, Jerome made one final attempt at control. He offered massive bribes, full private school tuition for both of us, apartments, cars, anything to make the situation disappear. His desperation revealed how much he stood to lose when truth fully emerged. Our unified refusal shattered his last hope of containment. Juliet and I stood together, choosing truth over comfort, integrity over bribes. Jerome's carefully constructed false life had no power over people willing to accept consequences for doing right. Mom witnessed our solidarity and made her own choice. She scheduled meetings with divorce attorneys, gathered financial documents, and began the process of untangling her life from Jerome's web of lies. Her protection of Juliet became active rather than passive. The school principal called, following up on Jerome's reports about my concerning behavior. Mom took the call, calmly explaining the family situation and playing the recording of Davidson's threats. The principal's tone shifted dramatically as he recognized the liability of employing a predator. Davidson's tenure protection evaporated within days. The combination of recorded threats, pattern of complaints from previous districts, and administrative fear of lawsuits accomplished what Juliet's truth alone couldn't. He was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Jerome's social circle crumbled as news spread through the country club. His protection of Davidson, once seen as loyalty, now appeared as complicity in predation. The very community he'd sacrificed everything to impress turned their backs on him. Our family's transformation accelerated. Mom filed for divorce, citing Jerome's emotional abuse and manipulation. She fought for the house, wanting to provide stability for both Juliet and me. Her lawyer used the therapist's documentation documentation to establish Jerome's unfitness. I faced my own consequences directly. College acceptances were withdrawn. Scholarships evaporated. The academic future I'd built over 4 years disappeared. But watching Juliet slowly begin to heal, seeing her smile genuinely for the first time, made every loss worthwhile. The divorce proceedings revealed more of Jerome's deceptions. Hidden debts from maintaining his false lifestyle. Secret communications with Davidson dating back years. A pattern of protecting his friend that suggested deeper involvement than anyone had imagined. Juliet's biological mother made one final attempt at contact. She offered to take Juliet back, but only if she agreed never to speak about Davidson or pursue any action against him. The conditional love came with a price tag of continued silence. Juliet's refusal marked her complete transformation. She chose truth over conditional acceptance, chose to stay with people who believed her over biological family who demanded her silence. The decision represented her first real agency after years of having choices made for her. Mom's strength grew daily as she navigated divorce proceedings. She took a second job to cover legal fees, determined to protect both Juliet and me from Jerome's influence. Her evolution from passive enabler to active protector provided the stability we needed. The school's investigation into Davidson expanded as more students came forward. Juliet's courage in speaking truth had opened floodgates. Other victims found their voices, creating a pattern that even tenure couldn't protect. Justice approached slowly but inevitably. Jerome's attempts at revenge grew increasingly desperate. He spread rumors about Mom's mental instability, claimed I'd manipulated everyone with elaborate lies, painted Juliet as a dangerous influence who'd destroyed a happy family. But his narrative found few believers. The therapist continued working with our restructured family. She helped Juliet process years of trauma and betrayal, guided Mom through guilt over her complicity, supported me in dealing with the academic consequences of choosing integrity over advancement. Davidson's final attempt at intimidation came through legal threats. His lawyer sent cease and desist letters, threatening defamation suits if we continued speaking about the allegations. The desperation behind legal intimidation revealed his recognition that truth was winning. Mom's response was to share the recording with more school board members. The documented threats made Davidson's legal posturing meaningless. His own words had condemned him more effectively than any accusations could. The predator had exposed himself. The divorce finalized with Mom receiving the house and primary assets. Jerome's financial manipulations had left him with significant debts from maintaining false appearances. The country club lifestyle he'd valued above family crumbled along with his reputation. I started community college, rebuilding my academic path from scratch. The prestigious universities I'd dreamed of were gone, but the education continued. Sometimes the most valuable lessons came from choosing humanity over advancement. Juliet's healing accelerated in an environment of genuine support. She returned to volunteering at the animal shelter, her patience with traumatized dogs reflecting her own journey. The scar on her face remained, but the wounds beneath began closing. Davidson's teaching career ended permanently. The investigation's findings, combined with previous complaints, resulted in license revocation. He couldn't hurt other students, even if criminal justice remained elusive. Sometimes accountability came through professional consequences rather than legal ones. Mom sold Jerome's golf clubs and country club membership to pay for Juliet's continued therapy. The symbolic destruction of what he'd valued most funded what actually mattered, healing for someone he'd systematically failed to protect. Our family dinners became genuine gatherings rather than supervised interrogations. Juliet ate with us, no locked doors or weapon paranoia necessary. The supposed danger had never been her. The real threat had been those claiming to protect us from her. I helped Juliet study for her GED after the school situation made returning impossible. We worked together at the kitchen table, building her academic future while rebuilding trust. Education continued despite institutional failures. The house felt different without Jerome's oppressive presence. Mom played music again. Juliet decorated her room with her own choices. I displayed my community college acceptance letter proudly. Small freedoms bloomed in the absence of controlling manipulation. Davidson left town after his teaching license was revoked. The community's recognition of his true nature made staying impossible. He disappeared to start over somewhere else, but the pattern of complaints would follow. Predators could run, but not escape consequences forever. Mom started attending support groups for people who'd enabled abuse through ignorance. She faced hard truths about her complicity while learning to forgive herself. Growth came through acknowledging failure and committing to better choices. Juliet and I grew closer through shared adversity. She helped me understand that integrity meant accepting consequences for right choices. I helped her believe that speaking truth wasn't betrayal, even when others framed it that way. The animal shelter offered Juliet a part-time job, recognizing her gift with traumatized animals. She accepted immediately, finding purpose in helping creatures who'd been failed by those meant to protect them. The parallel to her own story provided healing. Mom's divorce settlement included Jerome paying for Juliet's therapy indefinitely. The financial obligation forced him to maintain employment rather than pursuing his preferred lifestyle. Consequences came in many forms, not all of them legal. Our story spread through the community naturally, not through media attention or viral fame, but through whispered conversations and quiet support. Other families dealing with similar situations reached out. Truth rippled outward in small but meaningful ways. I transferred to a state university after 2 years of community college. The path was different than planned, but led to the same destination. Sometimes detours taught more than straight roads. My transcript showed a gap, but my character showed growth. Juliet decided to pursue veterinary assistance training. Her experience with trauma gave her unique empathy for wounded animals. The career path emerged from pain transformed into purpose. She'd found her calling through her struggles. Mom remarried eventually to someone who understood our family's journey. He accepted Juliet as his own daughter, providing the paternal protection she'd never had. The wedding was small, genuine, free of the pretense that had marked her marriage to Jerome. Jerome attempted reconciliation once, appearing at our door with apologies and promises of change. Mom didn't let him pass the threshold. Some bridges burned completely. Some choices created consequences that couldn't be undone with words. The house became a haven for truth-telling. Friends facing their own family secrets found safe space with us. success. Mom's hard-won wisdom helped other parents recognize their own enabling patterns. Healing spread through honest conversation. Juliet testified at school board hearings about protecting students from predatory teachers. Her voice, once silenced by systematic disbelief, now carried authority earned through survival. She spoke for those still unable to speak for themselves. My career path led to social work, inspired by our family's journey. The prestigious degrees I'd once pursued mattered less than the purpose found through choosing protection over prosperity. Success redefined itself through different metrics. Davidson's replacement at school implemented new safety protocols. Background checks became more thorough. Student complaints received serious investigation. Systemic change came slowly, but Juliet's courage had planted seeds of transformation. Our family photos showed the evolution clearly. Early pictures captured Jerome's rigid control and our performative happiness. Later ones revealed genuine smiles, comfortable closeness, and Juliet's growing confidence. Truth showed in unguarded moments. Mom kept the recording of Davidson's threats in a safety deposit box. Evidence of what we'd survived. Proof that predators revealed themselves when challenged. Protection against future attempts to rewrite history. Some insurance came in unusual forms. Juliet graduated from her veterinary program with honors. The girl once labeled violent and unstable had found her strength through gentleness. Her compassion for wounded creatures reflected hard-won understanding of trauma and healing. The community's perception shifted gradually. Those who'd believed Jerome's narrative about dangerous Juliet saw her working patiently with aggressive dogs at the shelter. Actions spoke louder than accusations. Truth emerged through consistent behavior. I met my future spouse in social work school, someone who understood choosing integrity over easier paths. Our relationship built on foundations of honesty rather than performance. Love grew in soil fertilized by difficult truths. Mom's support group expanded into advocacy work. She helped parents recognize signs of institutional abuse, taught them to believe their children's difficult truths. Her greatest regret transformed into her most meaningful contribution. Juliet's wedding day arrived 5 years after that night she'd tried to leave. She married someone who saw her scars as evidence of strength, not damage. Jerome wasn't invited. Some absences marked celebrations more than presences could. The animal shelter named their trauma recovery program after Juliet. Not famous recognition, just local appreciation for someone who transformed personal pain into healing for others. Impact measured in individual lives touched rather than broad acclaim. Our family survived through choosing truth over comfort, protection over reputation, and healing over hiding. The price had been steep, lost opportunities, financial struggles, and social upheaval, but we'd gained something worth more than what we'd lost. Juliet thrived in her veterinary practice, specializing in abused animals. Mom built a new life founded on truth rather than pretense. I found purpose in protecting vulnerable children from the failures we'd experienced. We'd all been transformed by choosing courage over complicity. The scar on Juliet's face never faded completely, but she wore it without shame now, a visible reminder that survival sometimes left marks, that fighting back against assault wasn't violence, but self-defense, that truth could be painful, but silence was worse. Our story ended not with dramatic justice, but with quiet triumph. No legal victories, no media attention, no systemic change, just one family who'd chosen to believe a traumatized girl over comfortable lies. Sometimes that was revolution enough. Sometimes protecting one person from continued abuse was its own form of justice. The system had failed Juliet, but we hadn't. In the end, that made all the difference.